Good morning, guys. So today I wanted to talk a little bit more, kind of an update video, because the last few days, the last couple of videos for sure, have been more teaching, I guess, in things that I've been learning and things I've been thinking about, concepts, stuff like that. Where I also want to make this video project for you guys in terms of documenting my life, and even for me to watch, uh, you know, distant future and be able to look back on and kind of have these timestamps of where I was in my life and what was going on. So let's just jump in. So I'm moving to New Zealand. Right now it's the end of November 2019, and I'm going to be moving, could be now as early as January-ish, as late as March. It's something I'm trying to figure out with my partner, Cherie, in terms of best scenario for many different aspects. I wanted to talk about a couple of the reasons I'm going to New Zealand. Potentially, I don't want to make this a too long video. There's many, many reasons. But I wanted to talk about part of the reason of going to New Zealand that is associated with me having a primary partner. So, Cherie and I have been together for over 5 years. And for the last year and a bit, we've been in a polyamorous relationship. I would say quite successfully. We're both very happy with, call it the container, and we've learned a lot and we've grown a lot through it, and we're continuing down that journey. One of the things that we've talked about for many years in our relationship, even before this going into a polyamorous relationship, when we were just monogamy and we weren't even really aware of poly and that it existed, we had this thesis. I've had this thesis that I came to, and then we discussed and we both like and want to test, which is when we have kids, we want to travel with our kids. Mostly because we both want to travel, and we don't want to be limited to this notion that, like, when you have kids and a family, you can't travel. It's just silly. So we actively want to travel the world with our kids, and there's so much to that, and I'm trying to keep everything, not too many topics, so that might be a topic for another video. But it's been on our plan for many, many years that when we have a family, part of that experience is we want to travel the world with that family and kind of raise them as global children, as children of the world and not necessarily of any one nation. Inside of that plan, we had this thesis, this thing that we want to do, because it sounds right. All of this stuff we've never tested, so we don't know, but it sounds great for both of us. Both of us are really excited by this concept, which is that during this time, as we're raising our family and traveling, and who knows, we might settle down in some places for a while too, we talked about the ability for either of us to go off solo traveling for a period of time, and whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be backpacking. Like, I have some ideas of spending a year in the jungle, studying shamanism, or spending a year in temple studying meditation. Like, some of these things that are really high on my bucket list that would typically be quite difficult inside a, let's call it, standard monogamous marriage container, to be able to go take a year to do something radical, and something that I really want to pursue. So we had talked about this idea that even when we have kids and a family, that we would still have this ability and even encourage each other to go off and do solo things that we need to do, things that fulfill us as a individual, things that are pursuing our personal dreams, and be able to swap in and out. And I think it's actually a win-win situation. I think people would get confused and think like, oh, the person going by themselves is the only one benefiting, and actually that's untrue. The power of this is that I truly believe both is win-win. So on the solo side, again, I mentioned some examples. It's like I can actually go do these things. I don't have to feel restricted or locked in just because I'm raising a family. Like I could go for 3 6 months, a year, whatever. The details would be figured out in the situation. But then on the flip side, it allows for either of us to kind of have this single parent container in which to then foster better relationships with our kids. So, for whatever reason, growing up, whoops, I always had this romantic idea of being a single dad. And I don't know why, and I didn't know why for a while, until I started to unpack it. And when I unpacked it, I realized that typically is true is as children we tend to develop a better relationship, especially if we have two parents. We tend to develop a better relationship with one of the two. Not always the case, but I think it's common, just because, right, we're all individuals. So even though they're both our parents, they're quite individual people. Often they're different, and so whatever our innate interests are or our personality types, we tend to drift closer to one. And I always had a better relationship with my mom. Just we got along better, we understand each other more, we're more similar, and not the best relationship with my father. And as I unpacked that, as I kind of figured this out, I realized like, that's this kind of dream of this romance around being a single parent, is because in some ways it forces the container forces the opportunity to develop relationships. So specifically meaning, when we have kids, Cherie and I, and we have multiple kids, and some might be drawn more to her and some might be drawn more to me, if Cherie goes and does a solo adventure, it allows me to have all the kids to look after. And so the ones that I might not have that close relationship with, the container allows the opportunity to then develop closer bonds, because there is no two parents anymore. There is no favorite. It's just me and them. And so it's like, and then we get to work through stuff and learn about each other and build that relationship. And then again, vice versa. I can go solo. Cherie can have this one-on-one time looking after the children. And again, even another way I think this works, at least how we've thought about it, again, not in practice until we're actually doing it, is we really want to raise kids in a community. And I don't even mean physically, but I mean in theory. Meaning, we don't want it to be just the two static parents raising, like the whole point of us not the whole point, but a part of the point of us traveling to, especially to different countries, is the cultures are very different, and we really want that like that community, or the, like in many other cultures, parenting isn't just to the two parents. It's actually the grandparents and the neighbors and the friends, and there's so much more influence. And so I think that'll help make it work. So it's not just like me trying to raise 4 kids. It'd be me in an environment leaning on whatever community we're in at the time to help influence and raise those children. Because I think part of it is getting past the ego that Cherie and I are going to know best. Like, we're going to know so much, and we're going to have a particular skills and particular maybe mastery in certain departments, and then obviously weaknesses in others. And so being open to allowing other people to be positive influences and the community to be positive influences to then teach and support. So part of me going to New Zealand by myself is to test this thesis pre-children. So obviously there's a component of when we do this in the future, still being able to navigate our relationship while at distance. And kids are obviously another element, another big dynamic element. And Cherie and I have only ever done 1 month of long distance, and so part of this also, and again many other personal reasons, but part of this for our relationship and in this container is to test this, give it a test run. Can we function optimally? Can we continue to work on a relationship while in two separate places? Is this something we actually want, right? I'm open to the idea that we discover like, that kind of sucks, and then reevaluate our future plans and figure out how we can still be individual and pursue our dreams, but maybe not have the same distance. Or we'll find like, who knows, maybe things for 6 months are like perfect, and then 6 months to a year is difficult. Maybe a year is a perfect amount of time, but anything over a year starts to be, the only way to know is to test. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I had to give some context of the theory we're testing, but there's more in here, but it's a long video already, so I don't want to get too much things. I wanted to keep it. So that's kind of the cohesive package of that idea. Is we have this thesis that we're going to raise our children, well, hopefully traveling the world, that's the plan anyways, and that we're going to spend time separately. And this is a good trial run before we have kids, to just make sure that we can kind of do the long distance thing and still operate a relationship, and make sure that that it works out in this fashion, and then whether or not it's successful will give us information to make new decisions in the future. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that for today, and I will see you guys tomorrow.